government for, by, and of the people.
Civil disobedience.
Government is the problem.
Upset. Civil disobedience.
Government.
Upset.
Government.
Upset. A lot of people are troubled by civil disobedience. When you talk about committing civil disobedience, they get a little upset. But that's exactly the purpose of civil disobedience. To upset people.
Government is the problem.
To upset people.
Government is the problem.
Upset.
Government is the problem.
To upset people.
Government.
Upset.
Government is.
My bandwidth is going up and down and up and down.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for tuning in this week for another episode of Civil Disobedience. I am Don, and my co-host is Edward Cray, who is an author. Go ahead and just tell, go ahead and tell people about yourself and who you are. This is the first time I've actually had somebody alive other than me on the show.
Well, I'm actually from Illinois. I moved here to southern Indiana about 3 years ago. I'm a recovering alcoholic and former drug addict, and I've basically, for the past few years, been trying to put my life back together and make something out of it. And it was about a year and a half ago today that I wrote my first episode of Wormwood Dawn, which is the apocalyptic horror series I'm currently working on and actually taking a hiatus from at the moment. But I've been a libertarian for about 8 years. I was raised a Republican, but eventually realized that they're just as bad as Democrats, so that's when I became a libertarian. And Don and I have been friends for a few years now.
Oh yeah.
And anything else?
Oh yeah, that's good enough. I've read a couple of your books. I was in the process of writing one of my own. I actually have it on the computer. Got the hard copy done, and I really haven't done any of the editing on it and anything else. I did send it to somebody to proofread, and after that, they kind of quit talking to me. So I'm just kind of thinking it's probably just a little bit too hardcore for some people, but my mind works different than my personality, which is kind of funny.
Oh, who doesn't?
Oh, I know. Tell me about it. It's kind of scary sometimes. I hear you about the libertarian deal, though. I was actually raised conservative. Grew up in church, going to church every Sunday, and one thing led to another. Started studying religion and kind of went off on my own little deal and kind of came back to the church recently. I agree with you anymore. To me, the left is wrong and the right is wrong, and whenever your politics believe... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I was basically raised not religious. I mean, my parents were atheists. I've always had more of a agnostic kind of attitude towards religion.
Uh-huh.
But as far as my own personal values and my own thoughts, I would say they're more conservative and Christian-like, even though I don't consider myself actually a Christian.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people that I know actually do. It's just some of them do. They're pretty conservative, but I do know being a libertarian to me it's been a lot more relaxing because I can see the evil in both sides of the issue. I firmly believe, if people just minded their own business and worried more about what was going on in their house and not worrying about what was going on in mine, that the country would be a better place. Oh. But
right.
one of the stories I wanted to talk about this week, I know some of my listeners have been following about my stance on the NFL and this Kaepernick BS that's going on and the protests that seems to be spreading from
Right.
going into high school and college and everything else. And the NFL's taking the beating on it. I think I read last time Monday viewership was down 46%, and the NFL released a statement saying that they were kind of blaming that on the election and not the fact that people don't want to see their country disrespected by somebody who's making $1 million a year playing a game,
Right.
and wants to lecture
Right.
me on injustice and social inequality in the country. It makes me sick.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you there. I mean, it's not like he's being oppressed or being treated unequal. I mean, I don't make millions of dollars a year, and I don't blame it on inequality or everything. That's my own fault, you know.
Well, some of us are meant to make $1 million a year, and some of us aren't. I mean, honestly, we all can't be rich because, you know, if we were all rich, who's gonna work? You know, that's just
Right,
just the
exactly.
way the system's set up. But at the same time, everybody has the same opportunity to become wealthy. You know.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing a lot of people don't understand is that they think that equal opportunity equals or means equal results, and you know, it's absolutely not true. You still have to work for everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Results may.
Yeah, results may vary. Yeah, that's I mean, you're right. I mean, all it's going to take is, you know, some producer somewhere reading one of your books and, hey, this will make a great TV series or a movie, and next thing you know, you sell your story, you know, for untold millions of dollars, and, you know, you're set.
That would be totally awesome. I would love if that would happen.
Oh, I think we all would. But you know, it just sickens me to see these people who live in a country who are free to criticize, don't actually seem to get the whole point about it.
Right. Yeah. It's disrespectful to the people who have fought for our country, and what they don't really understand is that it's those people who actually gave them the right to be the douchebags that they're currently being, you know?
Oh, yeah. And notice the lack of most of them, you know, I can almost say with almost 100% certainty that a lot of these people who are doing the criticizing aren't brave enough to put on the uniform and pick up a gun and defend the country and defend the rights that give them, you know, the ability to protest how they feel that they feel, you know, for the reasons that they want to protest.
Right. And I hear a lot of them say that, you know, the military doesn't really protect our freedom because they're off fighting in other countries, and you know, how did my freedom get over there? But one thing they don't understand is that the military is always working behind the scenes, you know, foiling terrorist plots, potential threats, direct threats to our country, you know, things that are happening across various borders, and they just don't know about them because, you know, the media is obviously not going to know about them. That's covert operations that are constantly going on behind the scenes, and nobody ever knows about them. So nobody understands that our military is actually always fighting for our rights, to protect our rights. Constantly.
Or things that are supposed to be covert that this administration seems to not understand the concept of black ops and covert missions. You know, the taking out of bin Laden was a prime example. First thing he did was get on TV and announce to the world that we went into a sovereign country without permission and took out somebody, that was our number one, was on, the top of the list for terrorism. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have did it. I believe, personally, I think they would have been better off dropping a cruise missile on the damn building and not risking American lives, and then kind of sifted through the aftermath and seen who was in there. But at the same time, it was somebody that needed to be brought to justice. It was, and in the direct result of his getting on national TV and broadcasting to the world that what we did was the Extortion 17 disaster, where 22 of SEAL Team 6 were killed in the downing of a Chinook helicopter by an RPG.
Well, I think it's just a good example of Obama's narcissism. I mean, he just wanted to get on national TV and brag about it, and just to make himself look good.
Yep, I believe that wholeheartedly. Joe Biden and Leon Panetta are no better. It really does. It astounds me to see, the person that is responsible for keeping our military safe. I mean, as safe as they can keep them. When you're responsible for sending people into harm's way, people will die. But I just it disgusts me to see the person that's responsible for that act in a manner which puts all of our men and women overseas in greater jeopardy.
Right.
And the Bo Bergdahl deal, where we had a policy before Obama where the United States did not negotiate with terrorists for any reason, and in order to get Bergdahl back so he can beat his chest again saying, look, I got us, a POW that was being held against his will in exchange for 5 of the top terrorists in the world. And Bergdahl walked away from his post, and there's some speculation as whether or not he cooperated with the enemy, because after the fact, when he went missing, the Taliban's and Al-Qaeda's tactics towards the U.S. military became more and more successful. And that's something that you're not hearing on TV about it. And, did he cooperate with the enemy? And if so, why is he not being punished? Because that is treason.
It is, exactly.
Yeah. You were military, correct?
I did a short stint in the Army, yes, back in the early 90s.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you for your service. I tried getting...
Well, I didn't do...
Huh?
I didn't do much other than drink a lot of beer.
You put your name on the dotted line where it needed to be put.
Right.
I know whenever I got out of high school, I kind of kicked around the idea, and I joined the Navy. I got into basic, and I was a couple weeks in, and then next thing I know, I'm getting jerked out of my rack by the shore patrol and brought before the officer of the deck for fraudulent enlistment, because while I was in high school, I went into high school in the 80s. We all liked to party and do drugs and everything, and I ended up in a rehab, and that was back when Clinton was president, and they were cutting the military, and I didn't disclose that whenever I went into the Navy, and my classification was anti-submarine warfare, and I had to go through a bunch of security clearances, and it didn't dawn on me at the time that they were actually going to look, and they found it. So,
wow.
Yeah. So it was either one of those things where you voluntarily leave, or we're gonna prosecute you for fraudulent enlistment. Either way, I was gone. So.
Well, how do they characterize that separation?
It was less than honorable, but it wasn't dishonorable. It was basically an entry-level discharge. Which
yeah,
I could have probably fought it and got the waivers, but at the time, the officer of the deck told me, my best bet was just to go ahead and sign the paperwork, because if they did bring me to court-martial and I lost, that it was probably not in my best interest, because like I said, they were cutting back the military, and there's a zero tolerance policy for drugs in the military. Even though I wasn't actively using, and I hadn't actively used in 4 years, it was still an issue, where they were gonna kick me out one way or the other. So.
Yeah, they're a little more strict nowadays. I think it was when was it? Maybe back in 2002, I tried to re-enlist, and I was actually wanting to go into the Navy, and I answered one question incorrectly, and that question was, have you ever had a panic attack? And of course, I had previously been living in Chicago, working a full-time job and going to school full-time, which is very stressful. So obviously, of course, I've had some panic attacks, but I'm guessing that's something I should have kept to myself.
Oh yeah, I hear you on that.
Very good.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'd stayed in the Army when I first enlisted, I would have been able to retire 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice setup there. My dad was career Army, and he retired. And I mean, when he was in, we were all over the world. We were in Germany when my sister was born, and he retired out of Fort Lauderdale in the late 70s. But I don't know. I sometimes I kind of wish I was able to stay in, but other times with what I see going on in the military now, I'm just kind of debating it. I did try to get back in later on after 9/11, and it was no dice. They once I got classified for what I did, and they weren't going to let me back in.
Yeah, I was really hoping.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's why you see these assholes out there now that think it's cool to take a knee for the national anthem. Especially with the NFL. I only watch the Steelers anyway, and I quit watching them whenever they signed Michael Vick. I mean, as a Pitbull owner, it disgusted me to the point where I'm no longer a Steelers fan. I don't care whether he's with them anymore or not. It's just the fact that, to me, the Steelers always had class, and when they showed that they valued wins more than style, I decided I had enough of it. And just this whole onslaught against the national anthem, the police and the people who serve, it infuriates me to no end.
Yeah. I the whole thing is kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, certainly I support somebody's right to protest whatever they want, but that doesn't mean you can be a douchebag about it.
Exactly.
And especially in the presence of people who have served our country. And I mean, it's a different thing than the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance was created, the 50s or 60s?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just a thing by companies that made flags, just to sell flags. I mean, it's a good thing, it's a cool thing, it shows some allegiance, but that's for the flag. The national anthem is, the national anthem. It's the song of our country, how we defeated the British, how our country was created, the people who died creating this country. I mean, you just have to respect it. I mean, it's not the law that you have to respect it, but as an American, you should just feel the power of that song when you think about what it actually means,
Oh yeah,
I would never take a knee when national.
Yep, I'm the same way. I don't know. I was reading a story here on Fox before we got on the air because, like earlier, you were having problems and we weren't sure whether you were going to be on or not. There was a black lady who was kicked off of a United Airlines flight. She was wearing a T-shirt that had an upside-down American flag on it, and the pilot seen her while she was waiting in the terminal, and basically she was in line, and the stewardess basically told her that if she wanted to board the flight, she was going to have to turn the shirt inside out. So she complied.
Wow, I hadn't heard that.
Huh?
I hadn't heard that.
Oh yeah, it just popped up right before we got on here. Anyway, she complied, and she went ahead and boarded the flight. And she had on a hat that said Black Panther on it. And the stewardess comes up to her again. The captain wants you to take the hat off because the term Black Panther is offensive. Now, I don't follow Marvel Comics or anything else like that. I don't know if there's a superhero called Black Panther or not, but to me, whenever I see a black...
Yeah.
Huh? Is there?
Yeah, there is.
Okay. Yeah. That's what she was claiming, that it was a Marvel comic. All right. See, I don't follow comics, but to me, and I don't care if it makes me sound racist or not. If I see a black person wearing a Black Panther hat, I'm going to just assume that they're a Black Panther. Just
right.
Like most of the black people in Pittsburgh, whenever I lived in Pittsburgh, seeing a skinny white guy with combat boots on and a shaved head, just automatically assumed that I was a skinhead. So, and she refused to take the hat off, and she was removed from the flight. And she was saying that she was singled out because of her race. And I guess they stated that the fact that, after 9/11 that, their policy is now that if people are uncomfortable with somebody on the plane, that the airline has the right to remove them from the airline if they're being disruptive. And that's what they were stating whenever she was removed. I'm as white as they come. I don't know anything about a Black Panther. I do know about the Black Panthers. I've had a run-in with them in the past. And I don't know. I just wanted to see what your take was on it.
Well, as far as her attire goes, the upside-down American flag, that symbolizes that our country is in distress. So I don't really think she was trying to be disrespectful in that area, at least. I've seen a lot of American flags flown upside down around this area where I live, in Brown County, Indiana, because people know that there are just so many things going on right now with our government that we are on the verge of losing a lot of constitutional rights, I think, if we continue down this path. So, I don't know if that's what she was doing with the shirt, or she was just protesting the existence of her own country in the first place. I don't know what to think about that. It just depends on why she was wearing the shirt. But I don't know. I think I would be undecided on that as far as her getting kicked off the plane. I mean, if she was not actually being disruptive, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. Now, anybody that actually has a head on their shoulders really does know that, right now this country is in distress. I mean, you look at the election right now, with the two party candidates that we have now. I mean, between Trump and Clinton. We're kind of boned either way on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm to the point now. Well, actually, I am going to sit out this election. I think I did miss um, the registration date for registering here in Michigan by a day. I think Tuesday was the cutoff, and I switched my driver's license over on Wednesday. So I did miss the registration, but I'm able to vote absentee in Pennsylvania, and right now I don't even know if I'm even going to bother. To me, you know, I don't see me voting for Trump. I would vote for him if it was going to be a close enough race to keep Clinton out of office, but as you know, and my other fallback would be voting for this, you know, to make sure that the Republicans did keep the majority in the Senate. But in the district I lived in Pennsylvania, that's a toss up there. Which one's the bigger douchebag? I mean, between Katie McGinty, who's a staunch liberal and Obama supporter, and Pat Toomey, who's drafted so many anti-gun bills as a Republican. It's just, you know, it's a no-win situation in Pennsylvania right now for southwestern Pennsylvania. Either one of them wins, the Second Amendment's going to be under attack, and I don't know if a lot of people actually understand that or not, but Pennsylvania is actually a stronghold for the Second Amendment, where when Texas got their open carry and their concealed carry, everybody seems to think Texas is the wild, wild west and is more free with allowing you to have guns, when actually Ohio, Pennsylvania, I'm not too sure about Indiana. And I think, okay, there you are. You know, in Pennsylvania, you don't even need a permit to open carry, where some states now to go to constitutional carry, but with either Pat Toomey or Katie McGinty winning, that's going to come under fire here in western Pennsylvania. It's just going to be another purple state that's going to go blue.
Yeah, it's kind of the same in Indiana with potential Democrat Evan Bayh. He's it's not that he himself is anti-gun. It's just that his picks for the Indiana Supreme Court are very liberal. I can't remember her name, but she's quoted as saying the right to bear arms is clearly not a fundamental right, which, you know, I don't know where she gets that. But in other news, Indiana is kicking around the constitutional carry concept. And even if John Gregg wins the race for governor, he's a Democrat. He was running against Pence in the last election. He's very pro Second Amendment, which is that's an Indiana thing basically. Even the Democrats here are very pro Second Amendment, except for some of the younger ones.
Yeah.
I mean, Indiana is a very conservative state, and even my entire area, Brown County, this area is all Democrats, but they're conservative Democrats. You know, the Blue Dogs.
Yeah.
What they're called. And I'll tell you what, almost everybody in this county is packing. It's conservative Democrats. They're very pro-gun, and it's great. It's very safe. There are never any shootings around here. Don't get me wrong, strange things happen, but it's usually something really messed up, like a hatchet attack or somebody chased somebody down with a combine or something. Yeah, rarely ever any shootings.
That would be something to see on YouTube, somebody chasing somebody down with a combine. I think I'd have to replay that one a few times. Huh?
That's almost Benny Hill-like.
Oh yeah, we'd have to dub Benny Hill over that. That would be funny. Yeah, that sounds actually a lot like I've relocated up here into Michigan, and when a lot of people think about Michigan, they think about like Flint, Detroit, Ann Arbor, the Lower Peninsula area, And the Upper Peninsula is basically a totally different breed of people up here. You know, we live basically 3 miles from the nearest, or 3 hours from the nearest interstate, and I think the closest city the major city that we have up here is Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is a little over 3 hours away. And Detroit is actually closer to, I want to say it's 6 hours away. So that part of the states is so far south, and the Upper Peninsula is actually more reminds me more of like the Midwest, like your area in north central Texas where I grew up. Everybody up here is very pro gun, and a lot of them are packing. Unfortunately, I'm not. I've got to do a 6-month probationary period up here since I'm a new resident. I'm not allowed to even apply for a concealed carry until after 6 months is up. So, right. Yeah, that's kind of like the downer right there. You know, my handgun's sitting in the holster up on the shelf. I can't carry it with me, but at the same time, I really don't feel the need to have to carry it here. You know, after 10 o'clock, this place is, I mean, you go outside and it's completely quiet. And this is the largest city in the UP here. And it's actually nice. And I kind of like fell in love with it whenever I first moved up here because of, you know, it's a very low crime rate. You know, it's very pro Second Amendment, and it's all blue collar.
Yeah, we actually have a very good friend who's a UP, as they're called, from Upper Peninsula. His name is Dave Nacarado, and he was actually running as a Libertarian in the Monroe County City Councilman race. I forget which district, but he's also a major realtor in this area. He's known as Indiana Dave, and he's a good friend of ours. Libertarian, nice guy. And I voted for him. He lost, but you know, like any other Libertarian candidate, he's not going to give up. He's going to keep trying. But he's a UP. That's what we think.
Yep. Unfortunately, you know, I don't. When people use the term libertarian, they, you know, it's that to me that's kind of like a broad spectrum of people.
Oh yeah.
You do have the more conservative ones, you know, the conservative libertarians, and that would be what I would for you because of some of your beliefs. You strike me as more of the conservative type, where I'm not as conservative. You know, and that's kind of like where I had a run-in with some of my family and stuff because they see me. A lot of them actually see me as a liberal because, you know, I am pro. You know, just you know, I'm pro-choice, and not that I agree with it. It's just to me, you know, I you know, that's a debate I really don't want to get into because that's kind of a toxic subject because, you know, my opinion is not going to change, and nobody else's is going to change, and all that's going to happen. But, you know, and I'm very pro marijuana, and you know, and I think that's really the only difference between you and I.
Well, a lot of times when people ask for specifics about being a libertarian, you know, what the attitudes are, policies. Basically what I say is that every libertarian has their own opinion and feelings about any subject that you can name. The point is not to push those beliefs on other people. And as far as a candidate goes who's libertarian, not to use those personal feelings and opinions to influence legislation.
Exactly.
You know, so in the libertarian camp, you have millions of people out there some of them who don't even realize that they're libertarians. They're just having their own opinions, their own thoughts about everything, but basically not really caring what other people think about it.
Exactly.
Minding your own business, basically.
Yeah, you basically described my mom to a T. She classifies herself as a Republican, and I really didn't realize what their political beliefs were whenever I was growing up, because politics was never discussed in my house, because my grandfather, who's a major lunatic, he he still talks about the Red Scare and everything else like it happened yesterday. So, politics was one of those things when we got the family together that was not discussed, and it's still not discussed, because it's just one of those things where, instead of having Easter dinner, it's going to be more like a battle royale and a food fight in the middle of, it's just going to end in a huge argument and stuff. But as I got older, I started talking to her, and when we started talking, and she started telling me, as time went on, I looked at her, I said, I wouldn't classify you as a Republican, you're more of a libertarian. And she's like, you think? I'm like, yeah, I really do, I think, and I'm not gonna get into some of the reasonings why I would classify her as that, but I think more and more people with this election are really starting to come around to that idea.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're too chicken to actually vote libertarian.
Yeah.
Because, like most people, they just don't want the other guy to win,
That's it. And right now it's going to be a battle, who are we, like I posted, in Trump's America, women cover their crotches, and in Clinton's America, everybody covers their asses, and people just don't seem to understand that we're not supposed to have to protect ourselves from our government. But until people change their way of thinking and their way of voting, and get sick of the two-party system, this is only going to get worse.
Right. One of the things that bothers me about the younger generation, those kids who consider themselves liberals, what they don't really understand is that even though a lot of Democratic voters consider themselves liberals, there really aren't any liberal Democrat politicians. Most of them are very conservative. I would consider Hillary Clinton very right-wing as far as Democrats go. Mm-hmm. Approaching fascism, if you ask me. And then there's the fact that the definition of liberal has basically been skewed, chewed up and spit out and reimagined as some weird, crybaby, everything offends me, you should live how I want to live. I don't like what you're doing, so you can't do it, that kind of attitude. And to me, that is completely opposite of what the entire concept of liberalism is all about. Because when you think back to the 60s and 70s, all these hippies that were the actual liberals, they were protesting for ending wars, smaller government, absolute freedom. I want to live my life the way I want, you stay out of it. They just wanted to live together in peace and happiness on their farms and smoke weed and listen to Jefferson Airplane and all that. But, that's not what liberal means anymore. It's the complete opposite of that. And I think they should just stop calling themselves liberals. Basically, all those liberals of the 60s and 70s are today's libertarians, I think.
Yeah, I kind of see that. Like last week.
Smoke weed.
Do what?
I quit smoking weed a long time ago, but every once in a while I will if I'm having some writer's block. But I don't care what kind of drugs you want to do, whatever. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, whatever. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think to me, if when if you look at the concept of banning prostitution and banning, let's say, drugs in general, what you do is you create a black market for it. And once you get the black market going, gangs, that's where they get the major source of their power and their income is by catering to these people, by either selling them drugs or pimping out women and so forth. And right along with that comes higher crime rates. Then you get an increase in gun violence and everything else as they're fighting for territory and basically trying to be the biggest, baddest person on the block. Whereas countries like Amsterdam, who have legalized all of that and made taxes off of it, you tend to have a lot less violent crime, and you have a healthier society. Where I'm not saying that would happen here, but at the same time, when you remove the gang's ability to make money, then you remove their reason for existence. And it just, to me, it seems counterproductive to sit here and ban more and more things and create stricter gun laws for people who are going to obey the law, and then you're basically empowering the criminals who now have a broader group of people that are now going to be their victims.
Not to mention making criminals out of those previously law-abiding citizens.
Exactly, because if they ban guns, if let's say they said, well, let's say Clinton was elected tomorrow, and the first thing she did was sign an executive fiat saying, anybody who owns an AR-style rifle needs to turn it in. I'm going to be a criminal because I'm not turning mine in. I'm not stupid enough to give up my weapon.
Right.
And I don't really know anybody who really would be. Because...
No.
And I like the... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I've heard a lot of people talking about how that's a possibility of her signing an executive order, but the thing is, that's a little bit paranoid, because in reality, executive orders only affect federal agencies and federal employees. The only thing she could do is basically ban further sales by ordering the FBI to give NCI or NICS background checks denials every time. That would be about the only thing she could do. There's really no way to take guns away from people who already have them. And even if they ban further sales or ban them altogether, like you said, it's just going to create a black market. People are going to have them anyway.
Well, whether or not it's legal for them to sign such an executive order or not, and we've run into this with the Obama administration, they still sign the orders, and then because they know that the states are going to challenge them in the federal appeals court. And this is where this next election is so critical, where you do have one open vacancy on the Supreme Court right now, and then you have 3 more set to retire within the next 4 to 8 years. So the next president is going to be critical, because if Clinton gets elected, she could basically stack the Supreme Court for the next 15 years with liberals and anti-gun. So when she does decide, you know what, I am going to sign this executive order, and I am going to leave it to chance that one of the states is going, or somebody is going to appeal this in the federal courts, and then it works its way up through the appellate courts, and then it gets into the Supreme Court, then you would have an issue on whether or not that executive order is actually going to become law or not. Because if the Supreme Court rules whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional, then that's something that, we have to live with for, until we decide that we've had enough. And the issue with...
I don't think it would take long for that to happen.
I don't think it would either. I'm really surprised that things really haven't fallen apart now. And I've talked with people about it. I've even gone as far as joining a couple of the militias, and I've never been anti-government. I believe in the government that our founding fathers laid out and in the Constitution, because I do know as a nation we do need a centralized form of government with the ability to control a voluntary army in order to protect the country and make sure that that there is some federal law and order here. But at the same time, I'm seeing more and more of the state rights being stripped away, and the federal government taking over the role of the state rights, and it's actually starting to get bothersome, because now they have the backing of the Supreme Court, and once the Supreme Court rules on it, it becomes the law of the land, whether it's a state right issue or not, and it's really starting to make me wonder, how much more, people are going to take before they've had enough.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably going to take a lot. People don't seem to be very motivated today as they were, say, 200 some odd years ago. And basically the Revolutionary War started over, what, a 3% increase in tax?
On the T, yep.
And now we have an average of 35% income tax rate, slow stripping away of our constitutional rights. Freedom of religion, Christianity is definitely under attack in this country.
Oh, yeah.
Not that I'm a Christian or anything, but most of my family and most of my friends are Christians, and I will absolutely stand by them if it came down to it.
Oh, I hear you. And this last WikiLeaks dump that they had, there was an email in there where one of Clinton's, I want to think she was a campaign, or it was somebody tied to her campaign, or the Clinton Foundation, or the other, basically came out and mocked and criticized Catholics.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, and as a matter of fact, it was yesterday, ABC did an article on their page about how Clinton receives an email every single morning from her pastor, and and I already know it's bullshit. Because if you look at Clinton, you see everything that she's said and done, and everything that she stands for. She's not what you would call the average Christian. Whether she believes in God or not is a difference. I can't say that, because I don't have that right, because I don't know her. But as far as calling herself a Christian, with her attacks on marriage, and her support for Islam, and basically saying that Christians are the intolerant left, or the intolerant people, and are responsible for a lot of the discord in this country, would go to show that she's actually not. And to me, it's and it's really no surprise that ABC would come out with a story trying to negate the fact that WikiLeaks dumped this story out where Clinton's is involved in a conversation where they're demeaning Christians, and trying to deflect that issue in the comments on there, kind of, because I glance through the story, and then I go straight to the comments, and a lot of people actually, were praising her. They're basically saying, it's kind of sad that, a Democrat's more of a Christian than a lot of these conservative Republicans, and I don't have the ability to keep my mouth shut. And I went on there and I fired back, and I'm like, this is basically ABC deflecting the real story, why Clinton's not being brought to task, why she was involved in a conversation that was demeaning Christians, but yet Trump is being brought before the media for something that he said in an interview that, in 2005, that basically was a locker room conversation. And the Clinton supporters really didn't like that, and I ended up basically just kind of unfollowing the post because, I got tired of my phone dinging.
Right.
But
well, yeah, I read some of those emails concerning that subject. The woman's name, who was the director of communications for the Clinton campaign, her name was Jennifer Palmieri.
Okay.
And yeah, those emails were really disturbing. It just follows along with this trend in this country. I don't know what it is about the left, how they think Christianity is so oppressive, and Christians are, they hate everything. They hate gays. They hate, this or that. But yet they, like you said, they support Islam, which has shown to be way more oppressive and is basically 7th century beliefs, whereas, Christianity has basically joined the 21st century for the most part.
Oh, absolutely.
But the whole attitude is just backwards. I don't get it.
Yeah, you and me both. I never will get it. And I know before I started hanging out with the pagans back in 1990. I grew up in the Bible Belt, and so I do kind of understand to a point what the liberals are saying about the intolerance of Christians, but fast forward, 18 years till today, where these same group of pagans have rights in Pittsburgh, and it's called the Friends Meeting House, which is owned by Quakers, which are staunchly, they're as conservative Christians as you can get, and they're, and it just seems like over the past 20 years, most religions have become more accepting of the way things are here in the United States, whereas Islam, Orlando was basically proof that Islam hasn't moved, like you said, hasn't moved past, the 7th. I'd probably move that back, that timeline back to about, the turn of, probably maybe the 1st century, where man was basically just one step above having a stick with a rock attached to the end of it and beating people over the head and dragging them into the caves marriage. And and that's the people that they support, and yet they want to turn their backs on a good 80% of the country.
Yeah, the whole Orlando thing, a lot of the LGBT community down there still blamed it on Republican hate.
Oh, yeah.
Even though the shooter was a Muslim who had ties with the Democratic Party, and his father actually works for, what was it, the Department of Homeland Defense or something. He's something in Obama's cabinet. I can't remember.
Yeah, I know. My girlfriend, right after the Orlando shooting, for her birthday last year, I sent her a 4N for her AR, and I was in Pittsburgh at the time, and I hadn't been up here yet, and I wasn't able to change it out for her, but she had a friend who was in the military that, brought his tools over and basically changed it out for her in 5 minutes. And, she took a picture of her holding her AR and switched it to her profile picture. And this was probably the day of, if not the day after, the Orlando shooting. And she did have some gay friends on her Facebook page, and they went completely batshit crazy over seeing that AR on her, that she actually owned one of those rifles, and basically blamed anybody that owns one of those rifles for the shooting in Orlando, rather than blaming, radical Islam for it.
Well, it's crazy because he didn't even use an AR. It was a 6-hour NCX carbine.
Yep.
I mean, same caliber, but I mean, there are literally thousands of different rifles that fire the 5.56 cartridge.
Oh yeah.
It is in fact the smallest, least powerful centerfire cartridge there is.
Oh yeah. It's just, I'm trying to think, what was that guy's name? His name was Michael Kuntzman, that did that video of him shooting the AR-15 and basically giving the story that he had suffered from PTSD and a bruise on his shoulder afterwards.
Right.
I was talking with him on email, and I tried to get him on my show, and he listened to a couple of my podcasts and decided he didn't want to do it. But yeah, the AR-15 is such an inadequate rifle for home defense. I've actually converted mine to a 300 blackout. I'm one of the I'm one of these people that think a 50 cal is just really too big because it's such a specialized weapon. If you're not stopping a truck, you really don't need it. Unless
right.
if you're going to have like a Barrett 50 cal, which can shoot 2 miles, and then you need a $12,000 scope in order to see that far. Where the 300 blackout for me is just my preferred choice, because it does have a little bit more power than the AK-47, which has more knockdown power. So here in Michigan, whenever I want to go hunting with it, I'm more apt to kill what I'm shooting at the first round, with a 25 grain or 125 grain hollow point out of that rifle than I will a 5.56.
Yeah, I think Indiana recently changed a lot of its caliber restrictions. Because previously you could only deer hunt with a minimum of 357, I think.
Uh-huh.
But they went down to 300. But I'm not sure whether it's strictly the Winchester, because it didn't mention anything about 300 blackout, or AAC as it's also called.
Yeah.
But it's a much different round. I mean, the 300 AAC, the slug itself is a lot longer. It pretty much takes up over half the cartridge, if you've ever seen one cut in half.
Yep.
And it has a much shorter range. After about 150, 200 yards, it starts to drop, because it's a really heavy round.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what caliber or which grain you get.
Right.
I shoot 125s. Whenever I first converted to the 300, I went down to Ace Sporting Goods, and all they had was the 220 grain subsonics, which really I can't shoot my rifle because I don't have a suppressor on there, and there's not enough back pressure in order to allow the bolt carrier to actually cycle properly. So I was having to rack the slide every time I wanted to chamber around. But yeah, that would be. But yeah, after 500 yards, if with the lower weights, the 120 and around in there, you can go 500 yards. But yeah, you do have pretty much an 18-inch drop at 500 yards, which is quite a bit. Where the 5.56, you don't have that anywhere near that.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
The 300 Blackout is one of my main characters' favorite types of rifles, along with the Rope SR60 308 bolt action.
Yeah.
Those are his two favorite. I think it was episode 5 or 6 when he actually switched to the 300 Blackout and made that his signature weapon, suppressed of course. And basically my main character Dan is me, so
Yeah.
everything about him is pretty much based on me.
Well, a lot of writers do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine.
Well, Don, I really
okay.
got to eat, man.
All right. Yeah, that's actually
just-
that's going to be a wrap for the show this week, anyway.
Okay.
Thanks for joining me.
No problem. Love to do it again.
All right. I look forward to it. Have a good week.
You too.
All right. Have a good one. All right. Thank you guys for joining us this week with Civil Disobedience. Yeah, we are having some technical difficulties, being the first time that I've actually had a co-host on the show with connecting with Skype, some background noise and everything else. Really hope to get some of the bugs worked out with the glitching and stuff like that. I'm not sure whether it's my computer or the connection, but I'll look forward to having you guys with me next week. This week I had every intention of going live on Facebook, but I'm having some bandwidth issues here. And I've got to figure out whether or not I can get two people to be able to be heard on Facebook rather than just what comes across my computer. I would definitely. We're hoping to switch the format here in probably a couple of months, with a different type of a setup with an actual web page and so forth. But yeah, we're looking forward with Edward's abilities. I'm really hoping that we can take this show in a different direction, and go with our own format on the page and everything else. If you guys are interested in putting any input, definitely hit me up on the Facebook page, or send me a message. Definitely looking forward to your input. You guys have a good week, and God bless. Thank you for joining me.